Do keep in mind that this is just another silly personal opinion on YouTube. It's nothing to lose any sleep over. So, if you disagree with this, feel free to say so in the comments, but just keep the abuse to a minimum, okay? In today's video, I'm going to talk about Ultimate Spider-Man, and I'm not talking about the fantastic video game or the terrible TV series. I am referring only to the comic series Ultimate Spider-Man, and mainly the Peter Parker version, but we'll get a little on Miles Morales as well. From the late 90s through to the year 2000, Marvel Comics needed some kind of rejuvenation for their series, as many of their characters and their story arcs were starting to jump the shark really, really badly. Enter the Marvel Ultimate Universe, a series of modern takes and more streamlined stories about all your favorite Marvel characters, Spider-Man included. Brian Michael Bendis was given the role of writing these stories, and it was Mark Bagley who really brought them to life with his artwork, with a distinctive new art style more inspired by modern culture, as well as freshly redesigned villains to fit this world. And I think it's safe to say that this version of Spider-Man has gone on to become one of the most influential versions of Spider-Man to date, with many fans regarding it as one of the best. As well as this, Spidey's film adaptations have often drawn a lot of inspiration from the Ultimate Marvel Spider-Man comics. Without knowing it, many people that never read these comics or comics to begin with will probably have Ultimate Spider-Man etched into their head as a vision of what this character actually is. And for quite some time, Ultimate Spider-Man was pretty unavoidable when it came to newcomers to the franchise. We had the Ultimate Spider-Man video game, with Ultimate Spider-Man also making an appearance in the video game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, as well as the TV cartoon of Ultimate Spider-Man, as well as the sub-comic book series which went with said TV series, as well as Into the Spider-Verse, which has dealt very strongly with source material from Ultimate Spider-Man. And like him or not, the Amazing Spider-Man movies did take a lot of inspiration from Ultimate Spider-Man. The Ultimate Marvel series, including Ultimate Spider-Man, would go on to become a very formative endeavor for the modern face of Marvel Comics, and certainly perceptions of Spider-Man to the general public. It was thanks to the Marvel Ultimate series that Marvel Comics was back on the map again, so I can certainly understand why these are regarded as highly as they are. I read them myself as a kid. I have a great deal of nostalgia towards the Ultimate Marvel Universe, especially Ultimate Spider-Man. But myself, if I'm being completely honest, I don't really like Ultimate Spider-Man. Now please keep in mind, I'm not criticizing Ultimate Spider-Man for changing things from what we knew from the Marvel 616. Frankly, the Marvel 616 Spider-Man had run himself into the ground long after Secret Wars. So what I criticize about Ultimate Spider-Man is not necessarily a pass for the 616 Spider-Man. One of the most notable things that Ultimate Spider-Man did was take the origin story of Peter Parker and make it more of a long-running tale. More of the story of Spider-Man, as opposed to a more episodic structure like the Marvel 616 did. This is a good thing for if you're going to reboot a Spider-Man comic. It gives it some longevity and makes it a bit more distinctive, as well as the fact that we can really get to know really important characters from Spider-Man's backstory, such as Uncle Ben. It means we don't just get to read about Spider-Man's origins, we really get to live with them. An awkward teenage boy, anything but fashionable, has trouble with bullies, girls, raised by his aunt and uncle, parents off the scene, gets bit by a radioactive spider while on a science trip, gains superpowers, thinks they'll fix everything, struggles to get over that maturity thing, results in him using his powers only for financial gain and personal gain until suddenly a criminal that he could have and should have thwarted ends up killing Uncle Ben, and then he kind of learns that he has to use his powers for good. But in the Ultimate iteration, we do explore much more of how Peter's early immature stages of having these superpowers affect his more personal relationships with Uncle Ben, Mary Jane, and Aunt May. When Peter finally gets these powers and these newfound abilities, he does strike back against the bullies, which results in very expensive medical treatment being required for them, and Aunt May and Uncle Ben have to pay that off. But this is the reason why Peter goes to the wrestling rink to go get the money and everything. As well as this, Peter's newfound abilities give him more confidence, which results in him kind of seeming to sort of get with girls a little bit at, house parties and everything. Mary Jane has to bear witness, and she has low-key feelings for him, and he has some deep-seated feelings for her, but those are kind of going, untouched at this point. And it's kind of on Uncle Ben to go, get him back and put him on the straight and narrow by explaining the philosophy of Peter Parker's father. And the whole involvement of Peter Parker's parents is kind of one of the things that makes Ultimate Spider-Man distinguished from its 616 counterpart. Now, I'm going to say this right now. While I don't like the involvement of Peter Parker's parents in the Spider-Man origin story, this is an improvement on the Marvel 616 version. See, in the 616, it was written in much later on that Peter Parker's parents were secret agents, that Peter had some kind of a military heritage, whereas in Ultimate Spider-Man, they are scientific researchers who died in a plane crash. However, they still play far too much of a role in Peter Parker's coming-of-age story, far more than I'd like anyway. And this is part of the whole problem with streamlining the story to the degree that they did. Richard Parker now plays a direct role in Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man, which for me belittles the entire point of Spider-Man. Peter Parker is just an average guy, you know? He's got things that he's very talented with, which is science and everything, but he was bitten by the spider completely by accident, and it's the kind of thing that could have happened to literally anyone. But then when you have Brian Michael Bendis tapping on your shoulder saying, but that spider was part of the Oz experiment, where Oscorp tasked Richard Parker with creating a new version of the Captain America Super Soldier Serum. It's awfully coincidental. Richard Parker's spider science project thingy just happened to bite his son, who he has not seen for about 8 years, because he's dead. And it doesn't stop there, it just happens that Richard Parker also had involvement with the creation of the Green Goblin, because the Green Goblin was made trying to sort of simulate that same ability that Spider-Man had, only that Dr. Octavius interfered with it this time. And as well as that, he even has involvement in the creation of Venom when he worked with Eddie Brock Sr. on making the cure for cancer as a sort of a biosuit thing. It's kind of like the Star Wars problem where absolutely everything's gotta be connected and related when it really doesn't need to be. And for it, so much ends up getting lost in translation. Peter Parker is no longer quite the accident that he was before, he's now more of a predetermined destiny because he's just really the next in his bloodline to sort of take on this sort of a role, which takes away from Spider-Man's actual role in the greater Marvel universe. And then there's just the general character and story of Peter Parker going forward. This version of Peter Parker is a lot more trendy and a lot more effeminate than the Steve Ditko Peter Parker that first made his appearance in the Marvel 616 universe. Now, as I said, my issues with Ultimate Spider-Man here don't necessarily mean a pass for the 616 Spider-Man. As soon as Steve Ditko left, suddenly Spider-Man was dating supermodels, having trouble choosing between which girl to date, having cat burglars come onto him all the time. Looking at the modern 616 Spider-Man comics today, can you really name a female character that exists in the Spider-Man universe that hasn't at one point jumped Peter? In the Ultimate universe, it's a similar problem, except it starts at the age of 15. This is a similar problem that we see in a lot of coming-of-age stories these days, where we've got a teenage character, and teenage guys, teenage girls even, you know, they have their wants and desires and everything, and they're all kind of ramped up to the extremes at that age. But the problem is many coming-of-age stories cater to it senselessly. They want boyfriends or girlfriends? They got them. They want a party? There it is. They want lots and lots of friends that value them? There it is. They want to kind of find their place? There it is. They want a job? There it is. And Ultimate Spider-Man treats Peter no differently from that, which undermines the concept of Peter Parker being kind of a reflection of the readers who are reading these comic books. And no, that's not me insulting people that read comic books and saying all people that read comic books are going to have struggles with girls. And I'm certainly not saying that Peter Parker should become your friendly neighborhood incel, but there are a lot of people that have trouble with confidence issues and dating issues late into their 20s. More so than you'd certainly think. There is a lot of societal pressure for young people to sort of get into dating and stuff like that at a very early age. So for your average teenage guy with confidence issues reading these comic books to be seeing, oh hey, Peter's got several different girlfriends under his belt all at the age of 15, well, it certainly undermines the concept of the hero that could be you. I always kind of look to the Steve Ditko Spider-Man comics as kind of the rule book to follow when it comes to the character of Peter Parker, and he did have love interests during the Ditko years. There was Liz Allen and there was Betty Brunn, but they were nothing but short-lived little flames and crushes that never really went anywhere. In Ultimate Spider-Man, as far as I remember, Peter Parker has 3 long-lasting and meaningful relationships. He breaks things off with Gwen Stacy, but continues to be best friends with her while he dates Mary Jane. Mary Jane is also best friends with Gwen Stacy. Now, I know that's a nice idea, but you really mean to tell me that that's a realistic one for teenagers that are probably overcome with hormones and mood swings? And then he also kind of has his own personal teenage fantasy when he dates Kitty Pryde from the X-Men. The whole thing with Spider-Man in the Steve Ditko years is that powers did not necessarily change this. They didn't necessarily give him that level of confidence in that he could turn his entire life as Peter Parker around. A large part of the theme of Spider-Man has been that Peter Parker's life sucks, and being Spider-Man doesn't change that. Another issue I have is the character of Norman Osborn. There's not really that much to his character before he becomes the Green Goblin. In fact, when he does become the Green Goblin, it actually says more about Dr. Octavius as a character than it says about Norman Osborn. We only really know that Norman is a bit crooked, and then he becomes a literal demon because Dr. Octavius wanted to do his own thing with the Oz serum. And once again there, we're connecting characters that don't truly need to be connected. But in this case, I actually don't mind this one quite so much. What I will say is this though, there's always been a lot of aspects to the Green Goblin and Norman Osborn's character that I've really appreciated that are no longer present in this iteration. The whole idea that Norman Osborn is really the antithesis of Peter Parker. When the going gets rough, Peter Parker steps up and does his best to make a difference and make things better. He wants to do right by Uncle Ben, he wants to do right by his family, basically. It is his core motivation. He wears a mask to disguise his fear from his foes. He got his superpowers completely by accident. Norman Osborn, on the other hand, is a man that is hungry for power and power only. He treats his son Harry Osborn as utter scenery, and when things don't go his way in regards to Harry, he treats Harry as a massive disappointment. Norman Osborn wears a mask by choice to instill fear into people. In the ultimate rendition of the comics though, Norman Osborn is really just a crooked businessman that wants super soldier serum. Yes, he's hungry for power and everything, but then he gets turned into pretty much the Hulk. And I can kind of appreciate the symbology of it, you know, the demons and everything, and he is Peter Parker's demon. And then there's other villains that I feel have kind of lost their appeal a little bit through the ultimate translation. One of which is going to be very, very controversial, but I'm just going to come right out and say it. Ultimate Venom has a decent origin story, and he looks terrifying, but there is one problem that I have with this, is that, to me anyway, and I think the point of the original Venom, was that Venom was kind of like Spider-Man's evil mirror image. He has a big spider on his chest, he has eyes similar shape to Spider-Man's, only jagged, and he's got this really crazed toothy grin on his face. He's basically a very distorted interpretation of Spider-Man. He was the sheer manifestation of every demon Spider-Man created. So his likeness to Spider-Man is kind of the symbolic culmination of this. But in the ultimate continuity, while we do have the kind of inner demon sort of a story to him, it doesn't culminate in the same way because Venom's appearance is so different to Spider-Man's that you don't get a sense of it being kind of a dark reflection. As well as this, in Venom's arc, you never really see Spider-Man face to face with Venom, you only see Peter Parker. I feel like there's a lot of compelling visual storytelling lost in that. And worse sin of all, Mysterio doesn't wear a fishbowl on his head. So that's why Ultimate Spider-Man just wasn't for me. But I won't lie though, there were a lot of things to actually like about Ultimate Spider-Man. Its style of storytelling, stretching the origin out as one big story, and I did enjoy a number of story arcs in there. It's just that overall I feel like it misses some of the better storytelling elements of the earlier Spider-Man stories, or some of the best Spider-Man stories in the Marvel 616. Many of these ideas have been adopted by later Spider-Man media, and have been done a lot better, and in some cases done a lot worse. Look no further than the Amazing Spider-Man movies for that. I do fully plan on doing a video on Miles Morales at some point, but for now I'm going to leave it here. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Let me know if you did, and don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and do consider checking out the Patreon link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and since Gotham ended, my channel has been taking a bit of a hit in regard to the audience, so I really hope that some of you share this video around a little bit to support this channel, because I'm always eager to expand the Channel Pup family. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day.